This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me. We've got a lot to get to as SMU Basketball just completed their roster on Tuesday with a big man committing to Andy Enfield. And we've got ACC Media Day recap for SMU. We're back from Charlotte, so I wanted to get this out to you. But before we talk about that, we've got to mention that we are presented by StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team today. Get that discount with code PONYUPACC on a round-trip flight. When you're looking at your options, whether it's you and a small group of family or friends or business associates or a large group, they've got the entire catalog of jets that they can get you into and get you safely and luxuriously from point A to point B. So reach out to them today to get more information on how they can transform your game day experience into an incredibly memorable experience, and they can handle all the little details from transportation on the ground, helping you plan out some catering for the flight to make it fun, and certainly give you all sorts of ideas on how to get the most out of your game day experience with our friends at StatusJet, proud supporters of SMU Athletics and the On the Pony Express podcast. Well, Andy Enfield has been hunting for a long time for the final piece to the puzzle for SMU. And sure enough, they went all the way out to Turkey to get a 7'2" big man. And I might butcher this, but Samet Yigitoglu is committed to the Mustangs now, a big man who's been playing in the European leagues over there in Turkey in the BSL. He averaged 3.7 points and 2.5 rebounds in just under 11 minutes per game in the pro ranks. But last summer at the FIBA Under-20, he averaged 13.3 points, 10.4 rebounds per game, and 1.2 blocks per game. So a massive addition for the Mustangs from overseas. The second commitment from overseas for SMU, joining Tibet Goriner. So that completes the 2024-2025 roster for Andy Enfield and co. And this has been an ongoing search for Andy Enfield and staff. We know he's gone through, quite a few targets at this point, but that's what happens when it was such a competitive market at this point in the offseason. But to come away with a guy that most of the Euro accounts that I've been able to see and follow have talked about him as a clear-cut pro in terms of the European ranks, a guy who coming into SMU at 20 years old is going to be able to start right away. He's got that experience. He's got that time playing in the big league, so to speak, over there in Turkey. Had a really good outing against a strong USA squad in the FIBA Under-20. So this is an outstanding pickup for Andy Enfield and his staff. So kudos to them for getting him on board. And for those SMU basketball fans waiting for more on the basketball team, well, they are done with the roster for the 2024-2025 season. They finish with 7 transfers and I think 7 transfers. Tibet Goriner, big man who transferred from San Jose State. Johan Traore from UC Santa Barbara. Cario Oquendo from Oregon. Boopie Miller from Wake Forest. Jarrell Colbert from Kansas State. Matt Cross from UMass. And A.J. George from Long Beach. So that is 7 right there. They add the big man from Turkey in Samet. And Mitchell Holmes, chance per year, 2 additions from the high school ranks. That's 10 total newcomers now to the Mustangs. And then they have Chuck Harris coming back. And they have BJ Edwards and Keon Ambrose Hilton. Sorry. For a second there, I just lost my train of thought on that. So that is your roster for SMU. And with the addition of Samet, now you can at least feel like they're going to have a chance to be competitive in most games in the ACC. I haven't turned my attention to studying the league as closely. Obviously, we know it's a tough league. We know it's one of the best, or it's really the best college basketball conference in the country. So SMU is going to have their work cut out for themselves this year when they do take the court, but they've certainly been able to find a way to bring in a bunch of different pieces, and it was super competitive, especially in the big man market late in this cycle. So for the most part, this is a really good pickup for SMU, and anyone who has a projection to end up playing in the European leagues and having a long career on that side of things, you can bet he's going to be a really good college basketball player for the most part if he pans out in terms of that projection. And from talking with a source, because this is one that over the last week I had heard about, had to sit on it. We saw what happened when some things got out when it came to some of the other players they were on, and it didn't end up going their way. And so now they were able to get this one across the finish line, which is a big deal. And I really got to say, this is a nice finish to the class. But that source told me that kind of see some all ACC potential. Not saying first team, not saying All-American, but potential to, if he hits in terms of their projection for him, maybe we see him land on a third team, an honorable mention. So really solid guy that they got in the 7'2" big man from Turkey. I saw some range. He hit a three. He's got that baby hook to his game. So he's not a dominating defensive presence. He's kind of got a little bit more skill to him, but this is still nonetheless. I mean, when you add a Johan Traore, who's a shot blocker, you add some of the pieces like Jarrell Colbert to the mix, you've kind of addressed the defensive side. They needed a little bit of skill. So I really like this pickup for SMU. Obviously, it was kind of slim pickings in a way, but there were still some options out there, and SMU was able to get this one across the finish line. So big deal for Andy Enfield and his staff. Before we go any further and move on to the ACC Media Day recap, want to remind you guys about our friends at AKM Turf and Greens.com. We had our first subscriber complete their yard. He had great things to say about working with Alex Carpenter and his team, and actually really just the quickness of which they were able to accomplish the work for our subscriber. Shout out Flock of Seagulls for jumping on board with AKM Turf and Greens and spending the time with Alex Carpenter and his team to get their backyard right. Here's what he said. Shout out to AKM Turf and Greens. They just finished my backyard yesterday. This was on Sunday. He said this ahead of schedule, and it looks amazing. Very easy to work with throughout the process. If you're remotely considering turfing your yard, I highly recommend them. Email them, info@akmturfandgreens.com. Get $500 off your project when you mention On the Pony Express or the code PONYUP. So Alex Carpenter and his team, they got it going on and have been hooking up our subscribers with some great work already. So excited to see what they've got cooked up next. And we're going to be excited to share what they finish up or what they have completed for Flock and show you guys the great work that they did. So I saw the before and after, though, completely changed the backyard. Really cool. So excited for them to enjoy it. With that being said, it's time to go down the rabbit hole of ACC Media Day, which was a lot of fun and also really interesting. This was my first ACC Media Day. This was an event that was really smooth, start to finish. With the staff that they set it up with is first class. I thought the access to the players and coaches was terrific. I just got back from SEC Media Days last week, where it's kind of an ESPN car wash. You really don't get that much time. They made sure that all the players, all the coaches had a good bit of time with the media. And so you always want more because, you do have national, you have other beats in there asking questions. But we know that fall camp for SMU starts Wednesday. So we'll be out there bright and early. SMU will be on the practice field. Rhett Lashley and his staff are back from Texas High School Coaches Convention. So what a week it's been for them to go right into fall camp. But I had a great time at ACC Media Day. I think watching SMU take the stage was obviously pretty cool. There's a lot of people that nationally and other beat writers are excited to see what SMU brings to this league. They won the AAC last year. There's certainly a buzz around the program with the money they've spent, the new facilities coming in, the giving up of the money, so to speak. But we know that SMU is ahead of the game with the amount of money they're bringing in, at least, 15 million now compared to the AAC. So with all the different monies that are involved. So a really good situation for SMU. And there's a lot of excitement around Rhett Lashley's offense coming to the ACC and seeing what they can do in year one. It's funny. SMU was up there on day one with Mike Norvell and Florida State, not on the podium at the same time, but in the same rotation, so to speak. And, Rhett Lashley and Mike Norvell have a relationship, but they're going to be facing off in the first ACC game for SMU. Florida State plays Georgia Tech in Ireland in week 0. So if you're watching SMU Nevada, you're also going to want to catch Florida State versus Georgia Tech. And it was cool to be around Brent Key as well, the Georgia Tech coach. I took some video, and I'm going to grab bits and pieces over the coming weeks and try to fit them in podcasts and things like that to introduce you to every member of the ACC and share some key takeaways and kind of look back on them. I know a lot of people are watching the ACC Media Days, catching up on your ACC network, making sure you have it for the season. But it's really hard to keep up with everything that goes on. So I'm going to try to do some mini previews of each team and fit those in. I'm going to go through and do all the downloading of videos and cut up a little bit here and there just to give you guys a glimpse. But Brent Key was really interesting. He is as focused in on the here and now as possible. He, and credit to him, he sticks to it, would not even talk about expectations. And I remember when Larry Brown was at SMU, he would roast a reporter here and there for looking ahead to another game and asking this and asking that. That's exactly how Brent Key was. And people tried to knock him off his game. And I even asked him after he kind of, crushed a couple reporters for, asking about expectations. This is not his thing. And I said, well, what do you have with your team? And he said, and he kind of afterwards kind of gave me a little bit of a smile, but he said, I know we're going to be in a team meeting tomorrow morning at 5:30 before practice. I know we're going to have practice right after that. I know I'm flying back tonight. And so it's really interesting to see all these different programs come to the table. And SMU has Florida State right in there with them. And they're the class of the ACC. They won the league last year. They went undefeated in the regular season and winning the conference championship. And I tell you what, the ACC championship is going to be tough to take from them. The trio of players they brought all fit the check out on the eye test there for Mike Norvell. But back to SMU, Rhett Lashley and his staff have worked a long time for this. And whether it be addressing the trenches with 13 of 20 transfers being from the portal in the trenches, to all the facilities, to all the building that they've done with their coaching staff and getting the right people in place and all the experience they have coming back, they're ready for a big, potentially a big year, but they're also respecting what they're walking into and the history of other programs and how it's gone moving up into that next level.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, we do feel like we earned our way to this opportunity, but at the same time, and we understand it's a different opportunity. We're moving up in weight class, like to play 10 straight power games. We haven't done that in almost 30 years at our program. And so that there's going to be some changes there. Like I said earlier, I feel very confident we have a team that's going to compete. What does that look like? I don't know. We're excited to get out and see where we stand and how we measure up. And nothing better than our first two games, the two teams that played for the championship last year, right, in Florida State and Louisville. But I do think there's also a level to, understanding what got us here and understanding our identity, and you're always evolving. But we have a veteran team coming back. We have a lot of guys who are on the team that know what it takes to win a championship and to win a lot of close games and to win at the level we were last year. And I think that'll serve us really well in this transition.
So there wasn't too much to take away from SMU. I was even talking with Coach Lashley a little bit afterwards and just kind of, picking his brain about things. And, SMU is pretty healthy heading into fall camp. Logan Parr is the one that's probably going to be a little limited just coming back from his shoulder surgery. Ben Sparks is a little bit ahead of him. So they are going to have at some point early in the season, both of those guys, and potentially by the start of the season, at least one of those guys, maybe Ben Sparks, back in the fold. So you're looking at it, Justin Osborne in the middle at center, Ja'Kai Clark right guard. You're going to have Nate Anderson. You're going to have, some different options there to compete with along the interior. But they have a lot of guys that they like at those positions, so they can allow Logan Parr to get fully healthy, because as EA Sports College Football showed us, he is the highest rated player on the team, which, is always interesting, considering Justin Osborne is certainly a very good offensive lineman, considering Elijah Roberts is that dude a lot of the time. But no disrespect to Logan Parr, he is now going to be coming back from that injury. They need him healthy. They're going to be a little careful with him. There's Braden Flowers, a redshirt freshman who is recovering from an injury, still on his way back, so he might be a little limited. But other than that, where SMU is at going into fall camp is really about competing. Preston Stone took to the podium and talked about the wide receiver room and just how deep it is. And Kevin Jennings represented SMU there as another quarterback for the Mustangs, and he earned that right with his play. And Rhett Lashley said that both guys deserve to be in Charlotte with the team or with the media days. And so you've got this group of players that are really going into what I consider to be the most competitive fall camp that we've seen probably since the death penalty. And you couple that with the fact that it's talent competing. There's a lot of talent across the board on this team, at least on paper, and they've got to find their ways to win those battles for themselves and to establish themselves. There are some spots that not really going to be challenged too much. Justin Osborne's the starting center. Elijah Roberts going to start at strong side defensive end. Ahmad Walker, Kobe Wilson probably are starting linebackers. The safety room's in good shape. But there's a lot of competition, and I think that was something that, with Rhett Lashley bringing Preston Stone, bringing Kevin Jennings, it said a lot about, one, how comfortable he is with both of them, two, how much he values both of them, and three, just the overall tone it set that they do have two guys that can play. But like Preston said, I thought this quote was really good. I've got some notes for our On the Pony Express subscribers coming first thing tomorrow morning, right when camp kicks off, on guys that could really surprise, could really make moves in fall camp and impress in the season. And spending time around Preston Stone, Kevin Jennings, RJ Maryland, Elijah Roberts, that wide receiver room is one where there's confidence there. And Preston Stone called it the best wide receiver room in the conference.
The biggest difference I've seen in this offseason compared to last offseason is we've obviously, a lot of our receivers are transfers, and the chemistry we've been able to build from year one with those guys to year two has been huge. And, I wholeheartedly believe that we have two sets of starting receivers, and each guy could go to a different school and be a number one receiver, but they have that selfless mentality of, we're going to spread the ball around, and our main goal is to win games and not chase those individual accomplishments.
And for SMU to be sitting in that position is really important. They've got a lot riding on this season. Of course, they've invested a lot in the trenches. They've invested a lot in their two quarterbacks to retain them. And the amount of talent on defense coming back is really important. But with those receivers and with the experience that Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings both have, there's no time to maybe wait for an adjustment period to happen, whether it's Preston Stone getting the start game one, which I think he does, or Kevin Jennings getting the start game one. There's got to be a difference between last year and this year of how SMU comes out of the gates offensively. Defensively, we knew for the most part that SMU was rolling early. They played very well against Oklahoma. They played better than the final score showed against TCU defensively. Offensively, the preparation, the continued growth from that quarterback room is important. And look, Kevin Jennings has taken a lot of steps forward since arriving on campus as well, and he can get the job done.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say it's a hard preparation because the great coaches I have alongside with me, they prepare me week in and week out to, be prepared to come in. You never know what's going to happen. So, just always be ready when your number is called and just prepare like a starter all throughout the year.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what made Kevin Jennings ready to step in when Preston Stone went down. You know, he was able to just really be on the ball and make it happen. So for those two, they're going to compete every day, and they're going into fall camp with a little bit more competition than maybe last year. You know, that was Preston's job, and that was apparent. You know, even during the struggles for Preston early in the season, they didn't waver, and eventually it paid off because Preston really rolled in the back half of that season offensively. It's a shame what happened, obviously, with the injury. But I think he's matured a little bit in terms of understanding that aspect. And, I think Preston would be one to tell you, like, that injury against Navy, it could have been avoided. And so that's just a part of the learning curve on that. And, they've got a chance to be really good offensively. And there's a lot of confidence in the positions that Rhett Lashley puts them in. And one of the guys that, if SMU is going to take that next step offensively, that needs to step up, it's RJ Maryland, because they've got receivers that need to step up. They've got talent. They've got depth. RJ Maryland is that dude at tight end. And when he produces and when he is on the ball, this offense is really tough to defend.
You know, it's always been a good offense, so not much has changed. So, just our mindset maybe, but nothing, no play calls because, coaches got us on that. But, we gotten a lot of new players, and they bought into what Coach Lashley's taught us, so it's all good.
Anybody catch the all good at the end there? A little inside joke for those longtime listeners. But, I think offensively for SMU, the key is going to be the offensive line getting settled. And when they hit that stretch, starting with BYU, having Logan Parr back would be huge. Being able to run along the inside of the offensive line is, I think, something that could be upgraded a little bit more this year with the athleticism that Justin Osborne brings. Logan Parr's in his second year in the system. Ja'Kai Clark settled in. I saw him at the end of workouts, and he looked like he had dropped a good bit of weight and looks in shape, ready to go. He's a big body, and they can rotate guys in. Nate Anderson was somebody that was shouted out last week at SMU workouts and the end of workouts, and he's just really put in the work. And speaking of, putting in the work, Elijah Roberts is about 285, 290, and he looks the part. He's ready to go. He told me that he lost last year about 15 pounds in fall camp. So the goal was to really go in heavy and then be able to adjust when it came to the fall camp, the losing of the weight in the Texas heat. And I think he's poised for big things. And who knows, maybe he'll even move around a little bit as well.
I think you'll probably see a lot of the same stuff. See me in 5 technique, 3 technique, nose. Even in the goal line, I get bumped outside to outside linebacker now. So it's a lot of new stuff for sure, but it's good for me and it's good for our team for sure.
So as you can see, somebody wanted to join in on the podcast right now. So we'll see how this goes for a few more minutes, but we're wrapping up anyway, right? Jack, Elijah Roberts moves around pretty much all the time in this defense. If you didn't get a chance to watch last year while you were cooking inside your mom, but he's really got that frame and athleticism that can do that and make that happen. And so Elijah is really, I think, emerged as one of the key leaders of this team. And his mindset, just being around him, is very much of a pro mindset. And, there wasn't much doubt, actually, that in his mind, he needed to come back. He has an opportunity to go back to the ACC, to go make himself some money in terms of the NFL draft and moving himself up. And he has worked out tirelessly with Sean Griswold to be in the best shape of his life, to be ready to go for this season. And again, he's very confident. He's got a defensive line that realistically SMU feels is 3 deep across the board. And I'd asked Rhett Lashley about that and the emphasis on that in terms of what they put in to getting those guys. And so that's another position that, across the board in fall camp is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. And look, they've got a lot of talent there. So we'll be following that position really closely to see what Calvin Thibodeau cooks up there and who emerges as the guy across all 4 positions for SMU outside of Elijah Roberts' spot, because we know he's going to be that guy for SMU. But One final takeaway from SMU on that side of things, and then we'll try to talk a little bit about Clemson and Florida State just a touch here. But there's a lot of excitement around this season. There's a lot of excitement around this move. Preston Stone, I asked him about, the Gary Weber end zone complex and how special that's going to be for him. And, he really called it one of the first class facilities in the entire country and was really grateful for it, even though he has memories of rolling down the hill. But the move to the ACC is something that, for him has been a long time coming. From when he was being recruited, they were working at it, and then, ending up playing for SMU and finally getting that news. So you can tell that SMU is excited for this opportunity, but Preston knows that there's tons of work to be done still.
Yeah, shoot, we're couldn't be more excited to be able to compete in the ACC. I think we've always felt and believed that there's not a team in Texas that can compete with us, and now that we're stepping into the ACC, we get the chance to prove that. And so, something Coach Lashley says all the time is that individual accomplishments are going to flow through the team. So I think we have a great culture of guys who have that selfless mentality of we're going to step up to the plate and play each Saturday for each other.
Yeah, so that's exactly what they're going to do. SMU is going to come out guns a-blazing, he said, in the ACC. So going to be fun to see what this team has cooked up as they make their first appearance in ACC play come September 28th when Florida State comes to Dallas. That's when a lot of people from the league are kind of hoping both teams are on a roll, 4-0 going into that one. So maybe they can drum it up even more as the Seminoles will come play the Mustangs. Rhett Lashley did challenge Mike Norvell to a game of EA NCAA. So we've got that to look forward to maybe as well. But SMU is like the rest of the league watching what is going to happen with Clemson and Florida State. And I said this on a radio appearance this week as well, but, there's not a sense from the Florida State beat writers that they're trying to get out of the ACC to go to the Big 12. They're trying to explore their options for the rights, the grant of rights to be struck down, and then they could be free agents and maybe then improve their positioning with the Big 10 with an SEC. Now, call that wishful thinking, call that whatever you want. I call it something that could very well be on the table. In my opinion, and this is after asking Florida State people and Florida State beat writers that are following this day in, day out, the real feeling is that unless the Big 12 comes up with some crazy way that really hurts the rest of its league members financially in a sense of their potential payouts, they're not going to be able to come up with the money that makes sense for Florida State to go to the Big 12. So I'm not trying to report on that. I'm not. I'm just passing along what Florida State's side of things are from people that are covering the team. And there's more of a, passionate, almost hatred on the Florida State side of things for the lack of money that has ultimately come in for the league because they got locked into this deal until 2036, which, look, they signed it. Clemson signed it. All the rest of the league members signed it. So that's their fault in terms of evaluating the industry and where it's going. But we will have to see what the courts say about the grant of rights and if it's remotely breakable, which, the whole position of Jim Phillips and the ACC leadership is no, it is not. And that's why Jim Phillips was pretty passionate when talking with the media on Monday at his commissioners forum, talking about all the different ways that they are at least trying, just having conversations. He mentioned that, he is going through every avenue to try to make more money. But one of the initiatives that they're doing is a success initiative. If you win a national championship, you can end up with $25 million added to your pool for that year in terms of what you earn as a school. So if you think about winning the league, if you think about going to the college football playoff, you're looking at 8-figure additional monies to come in. And I know it's not something that as of right now is counted on. Like, you can't budget for it. It's a bonus. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at the money and all of the different avenues of revenue that are coming in, the ACC is not far off from like being a league that can challenge the Big Ten and SEC in terms of money. And I know if somebody else, on the other side of that is watching this, they're going to be all up in the comments. But the reality is the ACC network is growing, and it's growing in distribution, and it's right there with the SEC in terms of the money that it brings in for the league. And if you can get multiple teams in the college football playoff, like, the ACC has potential to year in, year out, you're going to look at your money going up. The big key for the ACC is to keep putting teams in position to be multiple teams in position to be in the college football playoff. And that's something that they're working towards in terms of the league. And one thing that's mentioned too is there's going to be, a desire to have, as revenue sharing comes about, a minimum spend in football in terms of NIL and distributing revenues to remain competitive in the marketplace. So there's a lot of, I would say, action, as much as there can be from the ACC side of things, to work and try to stay ahead of this. Of course, look, I've said this before. Clemson and Florida State are suing the ACC. If you think they're going to stay for if you think they're going to stay for all the way through 2036, I'm not with that. I don't see it happening unless they really find a way to change the entire way that schools make money and the payouts are positioned and things like that when it comes to the league's revenue. So that's a whole nother podcast for another time. Love to share more on that, just opining really, but there's a lot of ways that people can fix the current landscape of the ACC, but there's a lot more discussion to be had on that front. So, but that's kind of the temperature. The temperature around some of the reporters there was, this is kind of silly if your ultimate goal is to end up in the Big 12. And I say that as someone who respects Brett Yormark's hustle for the league and how he is trying to disrupt. And that's a word that Jim Phillips used when talking about the lawsuits, is disruptive. But when I think about how the ACC is positioned, you look at Clemson and Florida State, Miami, some of the premier college football names in those three right there, and some other solid universities as well. Then you have Duke, North Carolina, Virginia. You have all of these other, and I'm sure there's other schools that will jump in the mentions and say they deserve to be put in the basketball blue blood discussion. But the Big 12, they have Kansas basketball. And they have some teams that have done some really good things in football, and they have some things that have done some really good things in basketball. But in terms of prestige, the Big 12 is fighting to gain some prestige. The ACC has some of that with some of the names that they have. So they just are not in a position right now to obviously demand certain things like the Big Ten and the SEC are, but they're in a better position than people think. And look, when ESPN has a chance to talk with the ACC about this, they know that the ACC network is something that is making money for them. It's cooking. It's actually doing well. And they're not, this is what most people feel around there, is they don't feel like this is going to be broken up. Because if you take some of the prestigious names out of there and you open things up and things change, and look, the courts are going to do what the courts are going to do, which is the entire wild card of this. But at the end of the day, the ACC network's making money, and ESPN doesn't really want to mess that up. That's the feeling I got from being in Charlotte for about 36 hours. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Jack is now broken into the podcasting world. He's made his first debut. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Apparently, I can't lull him to sleep with my voice just yet, but hopefully I didn't do that for you guys. So with that, we do want to remind you guys, we are presented by Status Jet. Use the code PONYUP for a discount on a round trip flight. talk to David Henry and his team. Go to statusjet.com and see if it works for you, see if it makes sense for you, and go down the path of trying to plan the vacation or the game day trip of your dreams with our friends at StatusJet. So hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We'll catch you guys later this week. Fall camp is here. It's time to jump headfirst into that for you guys at ontheponyexpress.com. So appreciate you guys listening. Catch you guys later this week with another edition.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.